Today, my guest is on this week's podcast is John Wood, aka Tri Coaching on Instagram. John is a swimmer, triathlon, and swim coach. Good to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Cheers for having me.
Shall we start off with some introductions? Do you want to just explain what you do and where you're based and your background?
Yeah, sure. I've been running Tri Coaching for 8.5 years now. It wasn't something I ever expected to have as a full-time business, certainly when I was younger, but I was fortunate enough to swim at international level. And when I was swimming as a youth, my coach got all of us as our squad to teach. So he paid for us to do our teaching qualifications so that we'd understand swimming better, we'd understand better for us by explaining it to young kids, 5 up through 11. So we were teaching people almost our own age, really. And having done that, it's certainly something I agree with. I feel like my understanding of my body and what I do in the water and when I run now is far better because I'm teaching other people, but also that then transfers back the other way because I'll feel things and something will click in my head that I can do with other people. So I've been teaching swimming for 20 years now. And I've been very fortunate to teach all levels, from learn to swim and scared of the water to some athletes who've gone on. I was fortunate to teach an athlete who's gone to win an Olympic silver medal, and also coach a Paralympic triathlete to gold medal in Rio. So I've been very fortunate to coach all levels, and there is a similar level of joy. In fact, there's probably more of a level of joy and pleasure that comes with coaching someone who's scared of the water because it's really life-changing. It's amazing to see someone get quicker and quicker and achieve amazing things. But there's a real joy that comes with life-changing effects for people.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Seeing someone progress from struggling to swim through to being proficient and efficient in the water is hugely rewarding for you and motivating.
Yeah, absolutely. And most people know that the majority of triathletes don't enjoy the swim. I'd probably put it at somewhere around 75 to 80% of athletes don't enjoy the swim to some degree or another. And so to see someone actually enjoy being in the water is amazing. Obviously, swimming's given me so much. And then sport as a whole, I've been fortunate enough to race at age group level as a triathlete. And sport as a whole has given me so much too. So to see people enjoying all facets of it has been amazing.
Yeah, you've just touched upon triathlon. What is your experience of? You've had some really really good experiences in terms of racing. Do you want to just talk about those?
So I started doing triathlon when I graduated from university, having done a bit of swimming and done some distinctly average running. And friends of mine said, "Do you fancy coming out on a bike with us?" And because they were doing the local triathlon, and I did on a borrowed bike that was far too small for me, and I had a lot of fun. So I very quickly fell in love with it, and I went from doing sprint distance to Olympic distance, did a few half Ironmans, and have ultimately done a couple of iron distance races. Made all the mistakes possible under the sun, which I try and then communicate to my clients, try and stop them making them themselves. But I've been very fortunate to race at age group level as well, which is nice. And I very much enjoy racing at Olympic distance, not that I've done any for a short while. And that's where I enjoy it, where it's a balance between how much training you can put into it, how much recovery it takes to come back from it. And also it's not too long on the day as well. You can do a race in the morning and still do stuff afterwards. You can celebrate or go and explore afterwards or whatever.
It's interesting you say about making mistakes. I think that's one of the areas, and it sounds quite kind of weird, but it's one of the areas that I enjoy the most in terms of triathlon is that you're always learning, no matter how long you've been doing triathlon. I've been doing triathlon since 2017, and I am learning every week. And it's not so much the elements of the stuff that I'm coached, but it's the elements of just understanding how the body works, understanding, I understand now why I'm doing, an interval based run. I understand how I can push myself and how far I can push myself. And I think that self discovery is important on many levels, not just in kind of sports, but also it's an element of human nature to want to determine what it is that makes them tick.
Yeah, I mean, you talk. Your podcast is called Perceived Exertion. It's about finding those limits, and we have more and more metrics that we can follow. Whether it's heart rate monitors, whether it's cadence, whether it's power, whatever it is, sleep monitors. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to what you can feel in your body, whether that's technical, whether that's effort based, whether it's mental as well. Learning how to deal with disappointment, how to deal with mistakes and failure. And people think that failure is a bad thing, and it really isn't. It's how you learn these things. And if you can learn through your own failures, great. If you can learn from other people's failures, even better, because it means you don't have to go through it yourself.
Yeah, there's a kind of chemistry, isn't there, to all of these factors. There's no one real kind of answer. There's a number of factors that kind of you put together to get through a training week. If it's a difficult week and perhaps you haven't performed in certain sessions, then kind of putting that behind you is quite difficult, and you learn, I guess, to adapt over time.
Yeah, one of the best things I've learned from coaching, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, is that you're an average of your last 5-10 sessions. We have amazing sessions. We all have great sessions, whether they're the test sessions or whether they're just ones that out of the blue go amazing and you're super fast or you just flow, whatever it is. We'll also have really crap ones. And that's just the nature of life. We have crap days, whether it's at work, whether it's with your family, with your partner, whatever. Same goes in sport. The rest of it will be the mundane, and it's how you deal with that average mentally that will help you move forwards.
Yeah, and I think for me, as kind of someone that trains quite hard, I'd rather have a bad session than not do the session at all. Mm-hmm. And I often will find that if a session hasn't gone well, then it has been hard for me in the past to kind of switch off. But it is about switching off and just think about what the next session is and how to tackle that.
Yeah, it's very much about how you reflect on that and on being able to rationalize things. I think people think feeling bad is a bad thing, along with failure, and it's really not. It's learning where those limits are, or understanding why you feel bad, whether it's tiredness because of stress, or you realize you haven't eaten enough, or it's been a hard week at work, or actually, like you said, you've been training hard for the last 4, 5, 6 days, and actually your body's due a rest. But it might be that you're at the end of a hard training block. So it's supposed to feel hard, even though you don't want to feel bad. Nobody wants to feel bad at any point. Like you say, it's learning to understand that and being able to rationalize it, so that either you can make it feel better another time, or going, okay, that's fine, on to the next.
So have you always been into sport and fitness? Were you really sporty as a child, and has that always been kind of part of your kind of what motivates you?
Yeah, I went to, when I was 4 or 5, my parents took me to my first swimming lessons. And I think I'm very much like Adam Peaty. The stories are to be believed post-Olympics. He went to his first lessons and kicked and screamed and refused to get in. And I was very much like that. My first 2 lessons, I didn't get in the water. And I grew up in Hertfordshire near a few reservoirs and the Grand Union Canal. And my parents were like, well, you have to learn to swim. So it wasn't an option. And after that, I actually quite enjoyed it and was quite good at it. I think growing up through school, I've always enjoyed being athletic. I enjoyed all sports. I just wasn't very good at them. That didn't stop me enjoying them. But it was something that endured and came through. And obviously being good at swimming helped. And even when I got to university, and I stopped swimming after 18 months, but I still wanted to be doing something. So I remember walking around the sports fair at uni and going, what sport am I going to do now? What am I going to have a go at? So it's always been something. And even through COVID, or especially through COVID, I guess, nobody's been able to race or compete, and that's how we measure ourselves. But it's certainly something I find is a way for me to have my own time, my own space, and look after myself. And it's a great way to explore. My partner's in South London, and so I've spent a lot of time with her over lockdown, and it's been a great way to go and explore a different area. And obviously when lockdown's in full swing, it's very difficult being in a flat with someone that you care about, because you both need your own space. So going out and having a run it is about performance for me, but it's also about the mental side and having your own space.
I agree. I think the element of kind of having that break, I mentioned on Instagram today about kind of the inability that being that most people are working from home now, the office is now the home, and it's really important to have that kind of switch off, that that actually my office has now closed. I'm now into home mode. And I think that for me has been kind of, I don't know how my mental health would have suffered. I'm pretty sure it would have suffered more by not having the ability to go off and do a Zwift session or go out and do a run. Because I know that is the point at which I have some personal time. I have some time to myself to get out and run. And it's I think it's an area that's not really respected enough in terms of kind of, you do hear about all the mental health consequences of COVID, but actually the bit that I think has been underestimated is kind of the working from home, being at home more. I think it does have an impact on people's ability to switch off. I certainly find I don't switch off that much from work, and that's something I'm working on.
Yes, and similarly, because I work for myself, I'm either on poolside coaching swimming, or I'm in the gym watching people run, or I'm at home writing training plans. And it's very easy when people are sending me emails, whether it's clients who are saying, can you change this for me in my plan, or can I have a session X, Y, Z? It's very easy to respond to messages instantly because we're on our phones, and that work-life balance counts for coaches, athletes, whether you are an elite athlete or whether you are, for want of a better word, a weekend warrior, somebody who's quite new to the sport.
Yeah, exactly. I do plan my week quite meticulously in terms of, I know that these are the times I need to try to protect. Otherwise, I'll just won't be able to train. And for me, training is an important part of my life. If I don't train, I feel bad. I feel really bad. It's almost an addiction, I think. But I think most people that do triathlon are addicted to sport in some way, or addicted to exercise. Say the dreaded exercise word, because in triathlon we don't really exercise, do we?
No.
We're focusing on kind of improving our performance, which is often commonly not described as exercise, but it is essentially an addiction to exercise.
It becomes a dangerous position, because people rely on sport then for their mental health, and having that ability to take a break. I mean, I shared a post on social media from fabulous physio, Australian physio, Brad Beer, I think his name is. He found a study about how people who take less than 2 rest days a week, and this was in single sports, endurance running and swimming and cross-country skiing, but people who take less than 2 rest days a week are 520% more likely to get injured, repetitive use injuries. And with triathlon, obviously, it's a little bit different because you're training across 3 sports, but I think that still holds. And the ability to stop physically and not break down mentally is also very important. So not only do you have a work-life balance, but you have a work-life training balance, or work-life emotional balance, maybe, where being able to stop is not a bad thing either. And like you said, people are almost addicted to that feeling of training, and it feels good, and then you stop and you go, your body goes, what am I doing? and it's being okay with that, so that your body can recover, your brain can recover, and find, and then carry on again, stronger, fitter, healthier, more powerful.
I think most training is about tricking your mind anyway. I think, I think there is a difference between complete rest, and reduction of load. And I think often the problem, I think, is unless you've got a very structured plan, you will a reduction in load can often mean that you do something that ups that load, either from a perspective of, a lot of people, I think, during a rest week or recovery week will go and do a lot of swimming, and even that in itself, depending on the type of swimming you're doing, will put load, and not as much load as perhaps going out for a light jog, which doesn't really exist. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a really important point around kind of recovery. I think especially in triathlon, you're training continuously. That rest should be part of your journey. It should be part of your kind of plan.
Absolutely.
Do you find that difficult to impart to those that you coach, in terms of understanding why you've told them that their load is going to be reduced for a week in a cycle of, say, 4 weeks?
So sometimes, yes. I have a few athletes, and have had a few athletes, who I will schedule in rest days, and they will still go and do things. And again, so I have some athletes who are, I mean, I'm no doctor. It's not a medical diagnosis, but I was going to use the word ADHD. They're full of energy and just keep buzzing and ready to go. And having that ability to stop can be coached, just like everything else can. The mind is a muscle, as well as the body and the gut and everything else. And oftentimes it's when things have happened, and again, it comes back to those failures and things going wrong and learning through your body, that's when athletes come back and go, I see what you mean now, because they've got injured or they're feeling so broken down and so tired. That's when things go. Go back to the post that I shared a couple of weeks ago, and a lady that I coached her and her husband for a few years, and she said, I'm now realizing this. And I said, I was trying to encourage this to you, but sometimes it doesn't matter how much somebody tells you something, whether it's your parents, whether it's your friends, whether it's a coach, whoever it is. Sometimes you've got to experience that for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's where I think the role of a coach is important, in that accountability element. So you're accountable to someone's on your back, watching you. But there's an element of getting that balance right as a coach that isn't so much on someone's back that they feel stifled in making intuitive decisions, and that's I think is a really important aspect of someone's training. If they're out on a run and they feel fatigued, it's more important for them to make a decision and judgment from themselves to reduce the load, reduce what they're doing, stop, don't do it, than to go, one minute, my coach is going to have a go at me if I don't. And I think getting that balance right is an essential quality of a coach, and not just in the sporting arena as well, across the board in terms of the workplace, etc. That mental health element of kind of your coaching with your athletes is an important aspect, both from a perspective of kind of them maintaining you as their coach, because at some point there's going to be a frustrating moment where someone says, I've had enough of this. Or the inability for them to make judgments themselves, which you want them to do, and understand whether they made the right decision or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone that I speak to from a coaching perspective, whether it's in general or someone who's having a call with me to discuss potential coaching, I tell them that I want them to be an independent athlete. We have our check-ins. I will check in by message, whether it's WhatsApp or email, and every month we'll have a sit-down catch-up. And I'm happy for them to ping me a message and say, look, I'm away with work, or life has been a bit stressful. Can we change things around, whatever? But equally, like you say, I want them to be intuitive. And if I've done my job correctly, someone will be able to get to the end of their time with me, whether it's after a few months or a year, or in some cases 3 or 4 years, and go, actually, you know what, either I can't afford coaching right now, or I can do this myself. And that's great, because I've done my job correctly, in that they can do the sessions, they can have those peaks and troughs in training, they can load up where they need to and not overload it too much. Well, obviously they need to overload to get the improvements, but not overload it so far that they cause problems. And they can have those drops as and where they need to. And it's really important, but different coaches have different coaching styles. And I have a few friends who are coached by other people, and it's exactly that. I hear some of the communications they have, and it's very interesting, because I would do things very differently. But just because I would do things differently doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's right or wrong with the right person. So it is a challenge, and that, I think, is probably the biggest part of coaching. I think it's more psychological than it is about writing the training plan, because anybody can write a training plan.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think that's the exciting thing about coaching, is that everyone is different. Everyone responds in a different way. You have to you have to be the most flexible person in the relationship, because you've not only got to work out what makes that person tick, but you've also got to work out how, what motivates them, what it is. You're a psychologist as well as a coach. And that psychology element of coaching is really important. If you have, you can just send a training plan over and just go and hope it works, but that's not what you do. That's not how you get the best out of the athletes. It's about that kind of, that relationship, that mutual respect, and an ability to judge what is right for that person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know some very, very good coaches, but I wouldn't want to be coached by them, because I get on very well with them. But having spent time around them, they're not the people that would get the best out of me. And similarly, I probably wouldn't get the best out of them. And it's a very interesting situation when you see that. And the more time you spend around people in that situation, the more you understand that. But you're absolutely right. I think the biggest part of the job is counselling / psychology. And it is about that 6 inches between your ears.
In terms of your, just in terms of your swimming background, obviously we touched upon kind of the most heard element of kind of someone that wants to come into triathlon is, I can't swim, or I'd love to do a triathlon, but I can't swim, or I'm not very good at swimming. Do you think, just in terms of your own kind of approach to coming into triathlon, do you think it helps being a swimmer first?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the hardest sport of the three to build up, because it is technical. You can go out and ride more. It might be a case that you need to build up confidence, or you need to get a better position on the bike, but ultimately riding more will make you better. And then within riding more, you can vary it in terms of load. Similarly with running, you can go and walk. Even if you're not a runner, you can go and walk a little bit and you can build up running. The problem with running is obviously with the load that goes through the body, that can add extra stresses, no pun intended, to everything that's going on. But it's still easy enough, relatively speaking, to build up. With swimming, because it's an alien environment, water is 750 times more dense than air, so you're always battling that. It is so much more technical than the other two are. An engine will only get you so far, whereas on the bike or on the run, it makes the bigger the engine, the better you go. So yes, being a better swimmer to start with can make a big difference. Unfortunately, when it comes to racing, whether that's at age group level or elite level, being a good swimmer makes less and less of a difference because the swimming is such a small part of it. You can see some of the guys, someone like Richard Varga, who races standard Olympic distance. He's a phenomenal swimmer. He could probably race for Slovenia as a 1500 meter swimmer or an open water swimmer, but he comes out of the water, and then obviously once you get onto the bike, everyone's working together anyway, and then he gets dropped on the run. And similarly with some of the Russian guys, I know Brakankov got pinged for doping, I think it was EPO recently, but he was a similar, racing at high level as a swimmer, and therefore comes out on the bike, and then because he's an absolute unit and he's not the most efficient runner, he gets left behind by the likes of the Brownies or Gomez or now Alex Yee.
Yeah, I think most people, would agree that kind of having the ability to swim and coming into triathlon, as long as your physiology. I mean, it's very rare that someone is a swimmer first and their physiology doesn't then also translate to the bike and running.
Yeah.
Whereas that's not necessarily the case with someone that's a cyclist or someone that's a runner is also built and is of the type that could also then do the swim. And it is, I mean, it's interesting from a physiological perspective, kind of the sessions where I'm in the pool and I'm, I've got intervals, and you look at the heart rate, you look at kind of, the load that's created, and those days where you're really efficient in the water and your heart rate has stayed, relatively low or lower than usual, I try to evaluate, what did I do different this time? Was it head position? Was it, was I, cadence of my stroke through the water? All these things I am constantly reevaluating, more than perhaps running and cycling, because I'm trying to say, what is that kind of missing? What was the thing that was missing this time, or what was the thing that I did better this time that I didn't do last time?
This is why I try and encourage people not to do too many long, steady swims. And this is going and swimming open water. People do fall into that trap even more so, because they will just go and swim for 4 laps or 3 laps or however many laps. You're better off, especially in the pool, doing sets of 100 and taking 10 seconds rest. If you want to do a 2K swim, I would rather as a coach get someone to do 2100s, holding the same pace and taking 10 seconds rest. And if you need more than 10 seconds rest, you need to slow it down because you're going too hard. But in that 10 seconds rest, you can grab a drink if you need to. You can evaluate, as you said, you can evaluate what you've done over that 100. And that doesn't mean you need to go into the minutiae. It's just going, how did that feel? And most of what I'm doing coaching in the pool, yes, I'm giving the technical skills, but actually it's more about increasing physical awareness and body awareness of where your body is based, kinesthetic awareness. Because when somebody has a swim lesson with me, they've got me for 45 minutes. We can have a chat before or after or whatever. But then they'll go away and swim. They might swim with a club, which case they may get a little bit of feedback, but chances are they probably don't get any feedback, whether it's with a club because there's too many people there, or whether they're swimming on their own in a public session. And so if you've not got somebody around you watching you, how do you know whether you're doing what you're doing? And so as you say, it's being aware of what you're doing. And that doesn't mean you have to think about things every single stroke of every single session. It's just having an awareness. And that's why I love swimming and running and cycling to a lesser degree as well, is that every stroke is another chance to get it right. If you are a newer swimmer and you swallow water or you scuff the water or you feel like you're sinking a little bit, the next stroke, you've got the chance to get it right. And if you know what you're feeling for, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's relatively simple. It might be a case of making sure your hand pulls straight back rather than slicing out to the side. Or it might be making sure you keep your spine really long so you can turn from your hips rather than your shoulders, which will make breathing easier, or whatever it is. But one of those things which made that last stroke a less good stroke or a rubbish stroke can be rectified on the next one.
Yeah, and I think there's small things that I kind of do to try to identify the data that I think more, as I said, more than any other sport, I am continuously tweaking and reevaluating what I do in my swim. and things like counting my strokes, changing my breathing pattern, adjusting my head level, so tucking my head down a bit more than I would, just also then bring the back up slightly. All these things I kind of do, and I love going and doing a technical session. No real plan, just kind of get in the pool and just swim and adjust and work out actually, how did that feel? I wouldn't do that in a run. I wouldn't do it in a cycle. It's for me. I mean, but that is, I think, predominantly like you. I had a swimming background before I found triathlon. My parents got me into swimming at an early age, and I swam for a club. But yeah, I think the motivator in swimming is that that speed per 100 meters, reducing that, but it's also reducing that, but also knowing that, when you finish 100 meters and you swim hard, that you're not as out of breath as you were the previous time. Your time's come down. The effort through the water has also improved.
Yeah.
And you do get the similarities with cycling and running, but it's not really the same.
Yeah, I think it's that sensation of going through the water. We run along, and I'm not a natural runner. It's something I've had to work at a lot to do comfortably and to do easily. But we've all had runs where actually everything feels effortless. But it's a very different feeling to swimming through the water. And I don't like using the word gliding, particularly with regards to swimming, because to me, from a technical point of view, that means that whilst you are moving through the water, your body's you're not moving in arms or legs, and therefore you're not creating propulsion. But you feel like you're slicing through the water very smoothly and efficiently. And I was very fortunate for 3 years or so, from 2012, I learned to row for a bit of fun, something to do through the winter, something a bit different. And it was very much aided by the fact that I swim, because that connection on the water is very similar. But I learned through that, I learned to double scull. And I was rowing with a friend of mine. And some of the rows we would have in a morning, partly, half asleep at 6:30 or 6 o'clock, the sun just coming up. And when you got the boat sat, because one of the real skills with rowing is to get the boat really well balanced, and you'd feel the boat slicing through the water. You could hear the water rushing off the hull. Honestly, that's something that the only other place where I've experienced that is swimming. And it is that slicing through the water with minimal effort. And when I'm teaching people, I'm always talking to them about, I want them to swim. I want them to be lazy swimmers. I want them to put down as little effort, little energy as possible to go as far for every stroke and as fast as is possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think the element of kind of adjusting and with swimming, it's all about practice. It's all about kind of getting in the pool. Frequently. My biggest tip for people that say, "Oh, I want to do a triathlon, but I can't swim," is, well, you won't ever swim unless you actually do it.
Got to get started.
And you need to get in the water, beat your fear, get in the water, and don't worry about open water swimming. You can do that later. But you're right. I mean, I think the element of kind of doing those shorter intervals is really important. I don't do many sessions now that are longer than 200-meter intervals. As we get closer to racing, that will, I'll go and do open water swims just to make sure that I continue to have the efficiency through the water for a longer distance. But I find that actually I start to drop shoulder. I'll drop my shoulder, I'll drop the efficiency, anything above kind of 200 meters, because you start to tire, you start to also get a bit bored as well, and not concentrate. So yeah, all my sessions are usually, I have a longer interval session once per week, a short interval session once per week, and a technical session once per week, and those seem to work well for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm less one inclined to have full-on technical sessions in people's plans, only because people generally have limited amount of time, limited amount of space. If you're fortunate enough to be able to get to the pool 3 times a week, great, but not everybody has that opportunity. Where I think it's a real focus is to put a lot of skill stuff into a warm-up and into a cool down, because they're the times when your brain is waking up to that swim. It is a physical warm-up, but it's a mental warm-up as well. And actually, where you are swimming slower and easier, hopefully, you have time to think about things, and it's something that you can then take into the main set. And then when you're tired and you're cooling down and you're doing 150, 200 meters, whatever, to finish off a session, it's physiologically a little bit of a cool down to loosen the muscles out, get the blood moving out of the muscles and get the lactate moved out of the way. But it's also finishing on a technically strong point, whether that's with a few drills or whether it's with some gentle kick or some easy swim. And to your point about getting bored going longer distances, I think that's one of the things that I benefit from being having a swimming background, is doing all 4 strokes. When I get in the pool, I will do all 4 strokes, and it was one of the things that I really struggled with some triathlon club sessions. And to be fair, I understand why people do that, is to do many hundreds or 200s of freestyle. But as someone who's come from swimming, and I was swimming 85k a week up to 18, I did a lot of medley swimming. I was a 200 fly, 400 medley, 1500 freestyle swimmer. And so I was always doing variety, did plenty of freestyle within that, because you have to do that as part of the volume. But I was doing all 4 strokes, and that kept it interesting as much as anything else.
Yeah, I've actually I stopped swimming with the club 18 months ago, and the one thing I've noticed, the last 18 months, I've done nothing but freestyle. It's something I need to reintroduce, the butterfly and the dreaded breaststroke, which
it's a stupid stroke.
I'm faster at floating than I am at breaststroke. It's something I should reintroduce, because it does. I mean, every stroke really does support kind of your efficiency through the water and allow you to. Sculling is the best drill for understanding your connection between all of the elements of your, of your upper body, in terms of that gliding through the water with your fingers.
And control.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's, I wouldn't necessarily get people doing fly in a session, unless they really wanted to. But I would get people doing backstroke and breaststroke in a warm-up or in a cool down, because if you swim all 4 strokes, you learn what makes your body move through the water differently. You learn about your body position, you learn about your head position. And then with sculling, if you understand that feeling of control of the water, that people talk about feel of the water, and what they mean is that resistance on your hands and then your forearms. And if you've got that constant control, you will go quicker. It doesn't have to be perfect sculling. It doesn't have to be perfect drills at any one point. But as long as you have a focal point and you understand what you're feeling for, you will go far with those drills and with that technique.
Absolutely. Where do you think people go wrong the most in swimming? What are the common areas that prevent progression?
I think the first one is actually people trying to go too fast all the time, which I think is standard across all sports. But I use the analogy that for the majority, 15 miles an hour on a bike, for let's say for a short amount of time, is pretty easy. Not necessarily for everybody, but for most people, 15 miles an hour is an okay speed. To go 25 miles an hour, maybe only for a short distance, for a sprint, is not too difficult. It's hard work. You've got to push your legs through it. But you can do that for 10 seconds or 30 seconds, or some of the better athletes can do it for minutes on end, and maybe even a 25-mile time trial. But to go 5 miles an hour is very, very difficult, because it relies on balance and control. So actually, in the same way that people will run far too close to their marathon pace or half marathon pace, thinking it's easy and not therefore running easy, actually a lot of people are swimming far too fast because they're relying on momentum. They're relying on speed through the water to get them to the other end of the pool, or to get them through the end of the set, rather than slowing down and being aware of what's going on around them, and therefore being able to keep their body up by good body position, thinking about good posture. I think that's the biggest thing, is that people try to go too fast too much of the time. The second thing is that posture. And some of it with swimming, or swimming especially, is very counterintuitive. The human brain, from a survival point of view, wants to look where it's going. It wants to lift our head to take breaths in. we want to kick our legs really fast because our brain is telling us that's what's going to keep us afloat. And all the things that our brain is telling us to survive are actually not going to help us. And so thinking about body position and thinking about good solid posture actually is always a starting point for me as a teacher, whether I'm teaching somebody completely new or someone who is very experienced and, let's say, reasonably fast. Getting better posture means that you create less resistance to the water. Less resistance to the water means you go faster for less effort. So it's a double win. And then if you're in a better position, you're probably in a better position to control the water with your hands and with your feet. So all of that then adds up to even more speed. So people then focus on the wrong parts first. So I think in order of what do people do wrong, or where do people go wrong? Mostly one is trying to swim too fast or trying to rely on speed to keep the hips up and everything else. It's then neglecting body position at the expense of the stuff that looks sexy and looks cool, using fins and paddles to rely on things rather than controlling that body position. And then the third thing is probably rushing through drills. Again, I suppose it comes back to the first one, doing drills because they feel like they should, rather than thinking about what they're actually trying to get out of anything. And that comes to most training anyways. If you're trying to do a tempo session when you run, hold it at tempo, control the effort. Don't go and blitz yourself, because you should be able to get to the end of that session and still go and do more at the end of it, or go and do something else later in the day or the following day. If you've gone too hard just because it feels nice, and we've all done it, I'm hold my hand up within that. But if you go too hard, you can't then follow it up. You can't back it up, and that consistency doesn't sit. So you need to know why you're doing something in particular. It doesn't necessarily have to be something specific to you. You could be doing all sorts of drills and they will help you. But if you know why you're doing them, you'll get something out of it.
I don't have any swim sessions where I actually set myself use of fins or paddles or pool. I tend to take them to the pool with me and use them as an aid for a few lengths. Mm-hmm. to address something I think isn't going well in that session. So, for example, if I feel I'm dropping, I very rarely drop my legs because I kick gently, and I keep a balance with that core strength through the water. But if I feel that I'm not, perhaps, something's not quite right in that connection, I'll put my fins on, not to use them to kick with, but just to give me that motion of kind of just gently turning my feet through the water. Same thing with paddles. If I think that I am perhaps rolling my shoulder slightly, I'll put the paddles on, because I know that I then keep a much higher elbow using them, and then I'll take them off, and then I use them as an aid to address deficiency that I've identified in my swim.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're doing drills of any sort, whether it's with kit or not, that is the real key thing. It's mixing the drill in and then taking it out and doing the full stroke. So that, let's say you do side kick, and I appreciate most triathletes probably don't do much, if any, kick at all. I think it's an absolute staple to do some kick in every session. I tend to recommend about 5%. So if you're doing a 2K session, that's 100 meters of kick, which is 8 half lengths or 4 lengths within a session, which you can break up over the session. But you could do 25 kick or even 12 and a half kick, and then 37 and a half swim, so length and a half swim for most people. But actually that gets you used to controlling that body position from side to side. Or you could do catch up. Some people don't like catch up. I think it's a great one for balance and controlling what you do at the front end of your stroke, and making sure that you don't cross over, because if you do it with your arms in line with your shoulders and don't try and go thumb to thumb, actually it's a great way of getting that spacing at the front end. But if you do 25 catch up, 25 swim, or even 25 catch up, 75 swim to make it 100, you've got that focal point at the front end of your stroke every single stroke, and then you take that into the full stroke, and magically everything fixes, even without thinking about it too hard.
Yeah, catch up's a really good drill. So for the listeners that don't know what that is, it's essentially you're exaggerating your stroke by keeping your hands in front of you, and you're moving your hands through and you're addressing it by pulling it over and then like
your
that.
hands
So,
out in front.
so basically, usually you do it with a stick or with a tennis ball, and you just hand it over to one to the other.
Yeah,
it's a really, really useful tip. I'm going to ask you a question which we hadn't planned, but it's one of my favourite bugbears. Etiquette in the swimming pool. So you would have probably seen from some of my Instagram posts, I am the most intolerant person in the swimming pool in terms of people that, for want of a better phrase, taking the piss, especially with kind of people going in the fast lane, which are doing breaststroke or backstroke. Are there any areas? That you find frustrating in the swimming pool?
Yeah, I mean, again, coming from a swimming background and a quite high level swimming background, I very rarely swim in public sessions because unless it's quiet, it frustrates me quite a lot. I think the biggest thing for anyone in the pool is the biggest two things are awareness and consideration, because you can go in any lane, quite frankly, but if you know that other people around you are swimming quicker, there's nothing wrong with that because you've paid your money to be there. But it's being aware of who's going around you and not just pushing off straight in front of someone because I want to go now. If you can see someone's coming in quickly, don't push off in front of them.
Yeah,
that goes both ways. You know, if you're swimming along and you see someone who is a bit slower, yes, they may be in the wrong lane, but at least to start with, they may have just got themselves in the wrong lane, and it's giving them a little bit of space and a little bit of time to find their own awareness and realize that they might be in the wrong place. But then it's consideration around others. You know, if you're coming up behind someone, tap them on the feet. Most people in the pool, hopefully, if they're not a new swimmer, should know that means at least by the end of the pool, move over or get out of the way or stop. And similarly, if you get tapped on the feet, doesn't mean, right, sprint quicker because someone's coming up behind you. You will get a better swim having your own clear water or even sitting in the slipstream behind faster swimmers than you will trying to hang on in front of somebody and potentially getting tireder and sloppier with your stroke. So yeah, they're the two things that really bug me. I don't mind people chatting at the end of the lane as long as they're out of the way. If the lane's a bit busier, then that may become a little bit more important. But similarly, I shared a post. I like to share sort of funny stuff at the weekends, and I actually shared a post on Sunday morning. There's a cartoon of slow lane, fast lane, and chatting lane, I think.
Yeah.
And it comes down to awareness. You know, if you're coming for a bit of social session, you know, you could be coming for a training session, but it'd be a social session with a friend. Be aware of what's going on around you. You know, there's nothing wrong with you coming and having a chat at the end of every set or every couple of reps, but be aware and just move out to the corners of the lane so that people come through. But I think that awareness and consideration goes both ways. It really does. And that's the other side of it for me not going in a public session, because I know that if I'm doing hundreds at, I don't know, 110s, 115, 100, that's going to cause problems for everybody else. And everybody who's come to the pool has paid their money to be there. They've got just as much a right to be in the pool as me. And just because I'm swimming at that speed, somebody who's swimming 145, 100 still deserves to be in the fast lane, really, because they're going to be swimming considerably quicker than everybody else in the slower lane. So it's something that goes both ways. And yes, I get frustrated with it a little bit as well, but that's my own frustrations to deal with, not for anybody else.
Yeah, I was a member of a gym where every single session was interrupted, and
yeah,
I was actually it was actually impacting on my swimming training. So even when you speak to people about it and tell them, you know, I don't mind you swimming in the fast lane, even though you're doing breaststroke or doing backstroke. But when I come up behind you, can you just stand to one side for a minute while I go past, rather than kind of push off? And I've had a few incidents where I've crashed into people as well, which hasn't been pleasant. But the funniest experience I ever had was someone who decided that they were going to swim a length, do some sit-ups on the side of the pool, in the middle
Yeah.
of the pool, with half their body in the water,
Yeah.
half the body out of the water,
Yeah.
and then do 10 of those in the fast lane, and then swim back, and then do the same thing but press ups.
Yeah.
So it was an all over workout in the fast lane, and that was a great session for me, because it not only disrupted the session, but I then couldn't concentrate because I was just trying to work out the psychology of this person thinking that swimming pool was also the gym. It was I've seen all sorts, and so I've changed to a different gym that has an outdoor pool, and I find that people are put off actually going in the pool outside, especially when the weather's not so great. So I haven't had any disruption since joining that gym.
One of the best, actually, if you really want to keep a clear lane, is to do a bit of butterfly. If you know, I'm 6'3", my arm span's 6'6", so if I'm doing butterfly, and again, you know, I will do it considerately. You know, I'll do single arm swimming past people, but just by doing that, sometimes because it creates a few more waves and stuff, people are less likely to come or get the wrong idea of which lane they may be in. It's probably the best way of putting it, because again, you know, if somebody's swimming 145, 100, they should be in the fast lane because they are going to be faster than people in the medium and the slow lanes. But you won't get someone who's sort of a 230, 100 breaststroke swimmer coming in there, because they'll go, hang on a minute, that's not for me. But it's always give and take, and I think a lot of our frustrations are very much our own. And to come back to what we were saying at the start about being flexible, learning how to do shorter sessions and how to be flexible swimming around people where the space allows is really important.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. Just kind of wrapping up, are there any things that you wish you knew when you first started in triathlon that you now know that perhaps someone that is coming into triathlon ought to know?
I don't think it's specifically triathlon. I think it's just general sport, and possibly to everything. But to really enjoy doing what you're doing, because none of us, or very few of us, are pro athletes. You know, we do this for fun. We do it as a mind clearer after the day or at the weekend. And yes, we want to push ourselves. Yes, we want to get the best out of ourselves. But if you're not enjoying it, why aren't you enjoying it? And so a lot of that tends to come down to putting too much pressure on ourselves. And so it's working out what you're doing and why you want to do it. You know, and if that why is pushing yourself to be the best possible that you can be, that's great. But that can't be at the expense of, you know, we've mentioned it a few times, is your mental health. You know, it's pushing yourself and knowing when to back off. So yeah, absolutely. Because I think I spent the first 4 or 5 years of doing triathlon of really not enjoying running. It's taken me probably properly to lockdown, because I had 5-6 years where I ripped my ankle ligaments 6 or 7 years ago, and properly tore them. And so I didn't do a lot of running from about 2014 to 2018, 2019. And actually coming back and running a lot over lockdown, I really found a love for running. And I'm not running anywhere near as quickly as I was back in 2013, 2014. But I'm enjoying running, and actually feel like hopefully next year, if I'm going to do some triathlon, that I can go and enjoy the training, enjoy putting the effort in where I need to. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that. You know, they enjoy the racing, but they don't enjoy the training. And it's working out why they don't enjoy that.
I think, you know, I've got an inner governor that says I don't want to do a run this morning most days. But I have a couple of kind of factors that I always say to myself, which is I came into triathlon to have fun, and actually the training needs to be fun.
Yes.
I find that kind of consistency is important, but having the same training every single week is a massive demotivator for me. It's great to see as a benchmark how I've improved, but it has to be fun. And so if that means, for example, I go and do a run, I go and do an interval run instead of doing perhaps a tempo run, and I avoid the rain and switch the day out from a Tuesday to a Wednesday, then kind of that's important. Like this morning, I was supposed to run this morning. Decided not to. I saw the forecast, it was going to be torrential rain. Thought, do you know what? That's not going to be fun. So I'm not going to do it. And I think that's a really important aspect. Why do you want to do this? Why is it you want to do it? And for me, it is about learning experiences and fun. If it's not that, then I then question why I'm doing it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really important to know what your why is, and be obviously trying to do as well as you can.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've said it several times on this podcast. Yeah, racing doesn't motivate me. Getting a medal doesn't motivate me at all. To the extent that I've been stood in a transition area thinking I don't want to do this triathlon today, and deciding not to do it because I just didn't feel it. And I think that's harder to admit that. The reason why I didn't do that triathlon, I've only done it once. I've stood in transition and said, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. And the reason why was because it was actually, I'm not the most confident cyclist, and I certainly wasn't. I'm more confident now than I was when I decided to do a triathlon. But there was a very tricky cycling route which had been adjusted, and it was over, I think it was eight different roundabouts with right turns. And I just thought, do you know what? This isn't an A race for me, and I've got here. I shouldn't feel compelled to do it just because I've got here. I've decided I'm not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of those things I have in my mind now that kind of I need to get my why right, so I don't get to circumstances where I am sat in transition thinking I don't want to do this. So I now really think carefully about races I sign up for, and I don't think about kind of that would be a good experience for me. I think about actually, where does this fit in with everything else I want to do in kind of personal goals?
Like everything, it's a balance.
Yeah, exactly. So what are your goals for this year?
So the last 18 months, like it has been for everyone else, has been kind of in disarray, really. I was supposed to be racing at the Olympic trials back in 2020 because I made my first Olympic trials quali time for 16, then 17 years. But then they did the trials this year with just the top 24, and I was never in the with any risk of qualifying for the Olympics. So I was like 60th or something like that. So that was out of the window. And I was hoping to do European Master Swimming, which was supposed to be in Hungary, Budapest, and that was supposed to be last year and then this year. So all of that's out the window. I might swim the British Masters Championships in Sheffield in October, and swim an age group swim competition or an open swim competition in Weston in November. I've set myself a target of trying to go under 42 for 10K this year, sort of as part of that progress of getting back to running where I was 7 or 8 years ago. But going into next year, the challenge is a few swims. So just keep the speed in the pool, because I'm swimming quicker than I was when I was 18, 19, which still blows my mind. But to do a couple of triathlons, maybe to try and work back towards age group triathlon for 2023, I guess.
That's good. I've had a period of kind of, this year I decided not to race and decided to try and reconnect with the sport. I've had a bit of a kind of not really properly knowing what I want to do. So supposed to be racing Weymouth next week.
Yes.
This weekend I'm not doing that. I've pushed that back to next year. So I'm definitely going to do it next year. My plans are to do a 10K swim race, which I did a 5K before. I'm going to do a 10K. That's firmly locked in. I quite like the idea of doing a 10K swim. See how that goes. Completely different kind of experience.
Yes, absolutely. Well, best of luck. Yeah, it's one of those things that I always say to people, like, if you've got simple, easy questions, I'm keen to answer them. I want to help as many people as possible. That's why I coach. So it goes to you, it goes to anybody who's listening. If you've got an easy question, ping me a question on my Instagram, my try_coaching Instagram, because it might be a case that I say, that I can't help you with a simple answer. So we can either do a swim session or we can book an actual call, and it might be a little bit different. That might not be what people want. But if it's a simple answer that I can give in 30, 60 seconds, I want to help people. So whether it's, you know, with yourself training towards 10K, or whether it's somebody looking to improve their running or swimming or whatever, you know, I want to be able to help.
That's great. And I'll put your details in the description below. But anyone that wants to contact John, please do. I mean, he's a very experienced coach and can offer some real insight and help towards your kind of sporting goals.
Thanks.
It's been really good speaking to you. I really enjoyed our chat, especially around the kind of a shared passion for swimming. And
Yes.
I really appreciate you coming onto the show. And we should you should come back onto the show, you know, in perhaps when we're out of lockdown, and see how things are going again.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we finish, from October, I do this every 6 months or so. I'm going to be running my 30 days of swimming challenge. It's all free. It's all via social media. But if you follow either Facebook or try or my Instagram, every day for October, or the first 30 days anyway, there will be a little video that will help you build up your swimming. It's not going to be full on, but it's something that hopefully might help people reconnect with their swimming or just rebuild it, because obviously people are coming to the end of the year now. There's not going to be much racing, so it gives you time to think about what you're doing.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'll mention that in the description below as well. So get in contact with John if you need help. And as I said, been great speaking to you.
Cheers.
Before we finish, I'd just like to say, if you like the show, please like, and again, I'd appreciate people subscribing to the channel. It does help the channel progress. But yeah, thank you.